Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about something a little bit different today. We're going to be talking about goals, and specifically how to overcome some of the mindset challenges that might prevent us all from reaching those goals. So, most of us know that you need a few key ingredients in order to set an effective goal. So, firstly, you need to get very specific about what that goal looks like. Secondly, you need to have a very clear why. You need to know exactly why it's important for you to reach that goal in the first place. And then you need a pretty clear roadmap on how you're actually going to step by step achieve that goal. But sometimes, even when you've got those three things present, there can be some mindset things that crop up that really derail our progress toward achieving those goals that we really want to achieve. So, in order to help you succeed in your goals, I have brought on success coach, speaker, real estate investor, host of the Golden Girls podcast, and my dear friend Lisa Michaud. And she is going to share with us some ways to overcome some of these biggest mindset challenges that we all face on the road toward achieving our goals. So without further ado, I bring you Lisa Michaud.
All right. So thank you so much for joining us here today, Lisa. I'm so excited to have you. Before we get into kind of the meat and potatoes here, why don't you just give us a little bit of a potted history of your background and, what makes you such an expert in goal setting to begin with?
Oh, hey, Rachel. Thank you so much for having me. I just love you, and I'm so grateful to be a part of this training here today. I like to say, it's horrible to admit, but I'm a overachieving, people-pleasing perfectionist who has had to get out of her own way many times. And that is why I now love helping other people get out of their own way, because I have made all the mistakes and done all the things wrong. So I'm right there with you. I feel like I don't want to use the word expert because I'm still in the trenches with you guys and still figuring this out for myself. But I think that's why I can help, because I've been there, because I made those mistakes and I'm not perfect. So let me take you back a couple years. I was living a totally different life. I lived in Fort McMurray, Alberta, had a really good job in the oil sands. My husband and I had just gotten married, and we both had high-paying careers. We had houses, we were traveling lots, and life was really good. And truly, if you asked me, I would have said, I'm happy. And then I had a health scare, and I faced the reality that I might only have a year or two left to live. And in that moment, laying in bed with my husband that night, I looked over at him and I said, what do you want to do if I only have a year or two left to live? And he's so pragmatic. He's like, well, honey, you're the one with the timeline. What would you like to do? And the first thing that came to my mind was move to Vancouver. Now, I am so lucky that was just a scare, and I'm healthy today, and that's really great. But what I realized was that there was all these things in my heart, all these things in my mind, these goals and dreams that I had for my life that I was pushing off for another time. I was pushing off for one day, maybe someday, maybe when my kids are grown up, when I have enough money, when I'm ready, all these things. And I wasn't actually doing them. So that dream of living in Vancouver, I used to come, and I should actually show you guys this, just so you can see. I actually live in downtown Vancouver now, if you can see that. But that wasn't my reality. I thought that I would never live here because it's so expensive. My husband's a small town boy. We have houses and mortgages and all these excuses. But the idea was, I'm either going to die with never having done this, or I'm going to freaking try. I decided to freaking try. And that was kind of the start of this journey. And what I realized through that process was that I'm not the only one. That I'm not the only one that says this is not possible, that makes a list of reasons why we can't do it. I'm not the only one that says things like it's too expensive, or I'm not smart enough, or I don't know enough, or I'm not ready. I know that's something that so many people struggle with. And that's why once I decided to make the move to Vancouver, we quit our jobs, we sold our houses, we bought a smaller house and live in Vancouver. I started getting really passionate about how can I help other people do this too? How can other people do this without having to have a health scare, without having to lose their jobs or have another trauma happen in their family, for them to actually take action on what's important to them in their lives. So that's how I got here, made all the mistakes. So I've made the mistakes, and I know how hard it can be to actually get over your fears and over your excuses to do what you want to do in your life. And that's why I'm so passionate, and I love helping people figure that out too, because we're in this together. And I know how challenging it can be. And I also know what I've learned that can help me, that I hope will help you too.
Well, I'm so happy you had that journey, because you ended up living a block away from me, and never would have become friends otherwise. So I'm also really grateful for that entire journey that you were on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So a couple of days ago, I reached out to some members of my community and I asked them, what is the biggest struggle when it comes to setting and achieving your biggest goals? So I got some great stuff, in response to that question. But before we get to that, tell me, like, what is the real reason that most people never actually achieve the goals that they set? Because I think most of us do have hopes and dreams and goals, and some of us may even write them down and may even review them once or twice. But sadly, so many of us, we don't reach the goals, and a lot of us don't even attempt to take the actions required to reach the goals. So where's that breaking down? Like, what's the real reason behind that?
I think one of the biggest reasons that people don't achieve their goals is because, first of all, they're not clear on why they really want it. They are chasing things that they don't really have a serious connection to. And I think emotions are really important here. We try and have everything up in the mind, but at the end of the day, you have to be really connected to what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to do and why you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I see so many people, saying, I want to make six figures, or I want to have this job title, or I want to have this much in passive income, or whatever that is, or a house and with this many square feet, without really understanding why they want that. And the truth is, on any goal, it's hard work. You are going to stumble. You are going to fail. You are going to maybe make somebody mad. You're going to have to change something about your life. And if you don't really want that, and if you aren't being pulled there for a very clear reason, it's not going to be motivation enough for you to get off your butt and do the thing. It's not going to be motivating enough for you to turn off the Netflix and go do the hard things. It's not going to be motivating enough for you to have the tough conversations with your family, or ask for help, or do those things that it's going to take for you to achieve your goal. So I think that's one of the biggest mistakes. I think people see what everyone else is doing and just assume that those are the same things that they should be doing too, without really getting clear on what is it that you truly want. I think that's the number one thing. Number two thing, I think we try and do too many things. And I am guilty of this. Like I said, overachieving, people-pleasing, perfectionist over here. So if you can relate to this, you're not the only one. Starting at the beginning of the year, especially like, okay, well, this year is the year that I'm going to put aside like $20,000 to pay off my debt. I'm going to go visit 6 new countries. I'm going to run 3 half marathons, maybe my first marathon. I'm going to publish this course and launch this YouTube channel and also find the love of my life. And I mean, I'm just exhausted saying the list, and probably most of you guys are too. And we look at that list of things that we're supposed to do, and we don't even know where to start. And we simply don't have enough time to do all the things. Motivation comes from taking action and actually doing things, not from just looking at a list. And if you do not have enough time to take action on those things, you're never going to get the motivation and the momentum to keep going. We get excited when we see ourselves making progress. And if you have too many things, you're not making progress on them. And so you're like, oh, there's no point. I can't figure this out. I don't know. I'm not good enough for that. I'm not smart enough. This isn't for me. So often I see people trying to do all the things, and then we end up getting disappointed when it doesn't work out. And then instead we blame the goal setting process, or we blame ourselves, and we think there's something wrong with me, or that's just not meant for me, or I tried that and I couldn't figure it out. But really, I think most of the time we're not really trying. We're not really giving it our all. We're not giving it the focus and the attention and the commitment that it really takes. So that's, I think, the second thing that's really huge. The third thing is, I think we try and set goals for the sake of goals, without understanding that we also need to look at our habits and our mindset. So 80% of what you do is mindset, not strategy. And to different entrepreneurs, there's going to be the camp people that say, stay in your day job until you've replaced your success for them. And then there are the people that have had to quit their jobs and be like, I need to make money so I can pay my rent. And that's the only reason my business is successful. That's an example of 2 very different strategies that work for both people and also don't work for some people. And neither of those work for people. What we know is that strategy isn't everything. It's about your mindset. And you've got to get your mindset straight, and you've got to get the habits in place to set you up for that goal. Goals are not about what you achieve. It's about who you become in the process. So to get something different, you have to fundamentally change who you are, how you think, and how you behave on a daily basis in order to get something different. So those, I think, are the 3 things. I think not being clear on why you want something. I think trying to do all the things, not having the focus, and not paying attention to also changing your mindset and your habits and who you are in order to get the new thing or do the new thing or be that new version.
Yeah, so much good stuff in there. I mean, I can definitely, that stuff resonates. Everything you said there resonates with me. the clear why. Like if I didn't have a clear reason why I had to get up at 6 a.m. every morning to put in 3 hours before going to my day job, there's no way I'm going to do that. But if I've got that clear why in my mind, then, I don't mind getting up because there's a reason for it. I'm not just doing it for no reason. And then, having multiple goals. I mean, that's something that's never worked for me. I always have to have like 1 or 2 goals tops, or nothing gets done. So for me, I've got my one goal. I've talked about this lots. I have that. I write it in my little book every single day, and it's the one focus that I have. And maybe a little bit to my detriment sometimes, because other areas of your life can sometimes get ignored when you're that focused. But it's definitely been a driving force in helping me to achieve any of the success that I've had. So I really relate to everything you just said there. So let's go back to some of the question that I posed to my community the other day. So I wanted to know what people think the real reason is why they never achieve their goals, and what are their biggest struggles when it comes to goal setting and reaching their goals. So here are some of the things that people came back with, and then we'll just kind of like dive into each one. So we've got frustration with the time it takes. We've got dealing with procrastination, being gripped by shiny object syndrome, getting lost in the details, frustration of the lack of results, perfectionism, not fully understanding the process required to get them where they want to go, and of course, the one that most of us can relate to, just a lack of time in general. So let's unpack each one of these a little bit and just talk about how to deal with each one. I think I've faced pretty much all of the ones that I just listed, and I'm sure if you're watching right now, I'm sure you can relate to at least one, if not every single one of them. So let's talk about each one a little bit. So these are real comments from people in my Facebook group. Let's talk about them. So the first one is from Nikki, and Nikki is saying that she's talking about frustration. So frustration at the time it takes. Putting in the work has never been an issue for me, but I can get extremely frustrated by delays at times. So I can totally relate to this. Through my entire journey, I have been just overwhelmed by this sense of impatience sometimes. Like if something I think is going to take a month, it takes 6 months, or something that's supposed to take a year, it takes 3 years. And it can be really discouraging at times when you're marching along and the results just aren't happening as quickly as you think they should or hope they're going to. But, does it really matter how long it takes?
I love this question. And all those things, as you were listing out everything your community said, I was nodding my head being like, yes, 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 I've struggled with all of these things. So I love this question for 2 reasons. Number one, hate SMART goals. I hate that they still teach this in school and that people think this works. Because one of the pieces of SMART, the T, is the timely. And I got to say this, I don't know any goal that you are going to know exactly when things are going to work out. The truth is, with pretty much any goal, there are going to be things that come up unexpectedly. Even if we think about something that you're quite in control of, think, for example, training for a triathlon or something like that. There's going to be a week when you get sick. There might be an ankle you blow out. There may be a storm the day of the race. There are going to be things that you cannot control in whatever goal you're working towards. So I want to say that I think that time is irrelevant. Thinking like we're wrong, or it hasn't happened in a month or 2 months. Maybe we're not good enough, or maybe it's not meant for us, or maybe it's not going to work out. I think, and Rachel, you and I have talked about this quite a bit, so I know you're on the same page as me with this. If it's something that you really want, it does not matter how long that it takes. The time is irrelevant. That time is going to pass by you. Today, if it takes you 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, hopefully we're still going to be here in 2 years and 5 years and 10 years. The question is, do I want to have achieved this goal or not? The time is going to pass. And so the question is, in 5 years, would I rather have continued trying and seeing where it goes and hopefully have that and be there? Or am I okay with never having tried and sitting back and having that time pass and think to myself, wow, I wish I would have tried, or I think I might have been able to, or man, but now it's really too late. Now the time has really gone by. So I think if it's something that you really care about, which is, goes back to what I said at the beginning, like you got to know why, and you got to really care about that goal, because we don't have control over most of the things. As much as we want to think we have control, we really don't. So it's super important that you have something that you really are committed to, and that you continue working at it regardless of the time, if it's still important to you. Now, I got to say this too. It's important to check in and see, if sometimes there are things that if it's taking you too long and your heart is not in it anymore, you're not interested in it anymore, that is also can be a sign. And it is okay to let things go. Just because you set a goal at one point, you may have changed, your priorities may have changed, the life direction may have changed, and that's okay too to let something go. It can also be an indication. So I do think time is helpful for us in that sense. Time, you can say, hey, in 100 days or in 6 months or in a year, I'm going to check in. I think it's very helpful from that perspective to say, is this still what I want? Is what I'm doing working? Can I make some tweaks here? What are the things that are getting me the most results? What are the things that, real talk here, that I need to change, that I'm not committing to, that I'm not being consistent with, that I can do better and show up? Use time for that. Don't use time as a measuring stick, and don't let time be the deciding factor of whether you continue or whether you stop.
Yeah, because it can be very discouraging if you've set yourself a time limit and you haven't reached your goal by that time. I mean, you can feel like you've just failed on your goal. And so that just, contributes to this mindset shift of failure rather than
Totally.
maybe you only needed a couple of extra weeks or months or even days to get there, but you've already kind of written yourself off as a failure because of it. So
Totally.
that's a big trap I've fallen into before. I mean, when I first started out, I had gave myself a year to make a full-time living as a self-publisher. And when that didn't happen come January, that was pretty devastating to me. And again, the following year, it was like, okay, if not this January, next January. And when that January rolled around, I still was not able to quit my job at that point. And it's really hard to stay motivated in those times where you feel like you failed. But it all comes back to the why. And I was able to keep going. But I mean, that happened 2 years in a row where I thought that was going to be the year and it wasn't. And then finally on that third year, I didn't need that job anymore. But it could have been very easy for me to quit in that moment. So yeah, I mean, I'm obviously so glad that I didn't. And it's a good testament to just keep going no matter how long it takes.
Yeah. Rachel, I love that. You literally gave me goosebumps there. And I'm sure everyone listening, that is so inspiring. That is so incredible. Like, think about how many people, and probably in our lives, even if you're listening to this, like, where have you quit when it was too soon? And I think you did the right thing. You used time as your marker to say, okay, check in. Let's keep, am I still in this? Do I still care about this? My why is still strong enough? Let's go. Don't let time be the negative thing that then lets you play into your inner critic of, I'm not good enough. I'm never going to figure this out. I'm not smart enough. I'm not whatever. I'm too old. I'm too young, whatever that is. Don't let that play into your inner critic. Use it as a check-in to make sure you're still aligned. And if you care, if you want it, keep going. Keep going.
Yes, so good. All right. Now let's talk about something that I think most of us, again, just like all of these points we're talking about here, I'm sure we can all relate. Now, this was I've got two things tied in together on this one response here, but I think there's two separate things to parse out here. But the comment is from Chris, and Chris says, procrastination and shiny object syndrome for me. I've spent thousands of dollars on every shiny object I can find. And then says, I found low content publishing, but procrastination is starting to kick in again. And, I'm inspired by Rachel, and I hope that's the end of the procrastination and shiny object syndrome. So let's talk about these individually here. So first off, procrastination. What is that all about? And how do we actually get out of that habit of procrastinating?
Okay, so procrastination. You are your own best expert, okay? I appreciate coming in here and being able to share my wisdom, but I want to say that you've got a lot of wisdom in you. And procrastination is one of those things where you've got to answer this for yourself. So how do you figure this out? You've got to look and start spotting the patterns of your procrastination. Is there a particular type of work that you're procrastinating on? Is there a time of day where you find yourself procrastinating? Is there a particular project or a client or a coworker or a team, something that you keep procrastinating on? And what I encourage you to do is put a sticky note next to your desk, like right there, and pay attention when you find yourself, okay, I'm going to have my third snack for the afternoon, or, oh, here I am in the scroll hole again, or here I am trying to do my bookkeeping because that's more exciting than what I'm procrastinating on. Spot the trends. What is it that you're procrastinating on? What's the time of day? What's going on for you? And what are you feeling? So because what the trend is then makes a difference on what your strategy is and what you actually do. So if it's just distractions, let's say you've got people coming in and that's why you keep procrastinating. Okay, well, put a sign on your office door. Work in sprints. Turn off your notifications on your phone. Maybe work at 6 a.m, like Rachel. No one else is awake at that time, right? So if it's just distractions, you can do that. If it's a time of day, okay, if it's always that time of day, 3 o'clock, your brain is shutting down. You need a mental break. Well, go for a walk outside or give yourself that permission to take a break, and then you'll feel better for yourself. Now, maybe it's of a task that you're doing, something that you're doing, or the type of work that you're doing, or the project, or something there. I think there's actually often an underlying level, something psychological, a belief, a mindset that may be going on to stop you there. So
That's what I was going to ask you, because I love all the tactics you're talking about, but sometimes it's more like there's a psychological thing that's holding us
yeah,
back. And what is that? Is it
100%.
fear? Is it fear of success? Is it fear of failure? Is it, I think it's an avoidance tactic, right? So
Exactly. So, okay, there's two camps of this. There is the one camp where there is something that is holding you back that you've got to uncover if you want to move forward. So these are things like fear. So fear of, if I put this out there, what are other people going to think? What if I do this and I fail? Then what? Am I going to have to go back to my day job? Well, if I fail, like, what does that mean? What does it say about who I am? What if I'm successful? What are people going to think? If my family, there's so much around this too, by the way, like fear of success is very real, and a lot of people struggle with that too. Is it scarcity? Is it like, if I put this out there, well, there aren't actually enough clients out there for me, or there aren't enough people to buy this, and so it's just not going to work out in the end. There's so many things there. It could be discomfort, and this is where you've got to tap into yourself. And I know that if you're listening to this, if you're the kind of person in Rachel's community, and especially if you're inspired by her, like I am too, you're smart. Like, you go inside yourself and ask yourself, what is going on? It could be overwhelm. It could be, I have so many things on my plate, and like, this is just one that I just don't have the mental space for. And so you keep putting it off and procrastinating it on. It could also be because that's the thing that's scary. That's the thing that's uncomfortable. Maybe it's a tough conversation you need to have. Maybe there's a way that you have to show up as a leader that you haven't been doing. Is it sales calls and you hate selling? Do you hate pitching yourself? Like, what is it that you need? And then you can look at strategies. But you got to figure out first, like, what is the psychological thing going on? Is it a fear? Is it uncomfort? Is it not knowing what to do? Maybe you need to do a little bit more research. Do you just need to pump yourself up for the tough conversation? Do you need to have a pep talk with a friend? Hey, Rachel, do you need to have a dance party? Do you need to give yourself a reward afterwards? What do you need to do? Is it overwhelmed? Do you need to take a break? But it really, really, really starts with awareness. So that's kind of the one camp of them, of procrastination. I also want to say that procrastination can sometimes be a gift, and it can really tell you, is this something you really should be doing or something you need to be doing? I've had lots of clients who've had epiphanies when they spot the trend of what they're procrastinating on. They realize they don't want to be doing the work that they're doing. And it's a chance to then be like, okay, that like this business that I thought would be fantastic actually isn't for me. I've had clients that have realized that and had to pivot. Or even just the type of work, like, is this something that I can outsource? It's not for me to be doing this, and it doesn't make sense for me at my level to be, or my skill set to be doing this work. There can be a gift in procrastination here. It's there to give you signs. It's your brain telling you there's something more here. Like, pay attention. Whether that's you have some fears that you're not addressing, or you're not showing up with the courage and leadership you need to in the situation like you need to, or I'm just exhausted. Give me a freaking break. Please give me a break. Like, that's your brain just saying, hey, I got something going on here. And it's a chance for you to dive deeper and dig in and find out what's really going on for you.
excellent. I like that. Okay, so what about shiny object syndrome? Because we've all been there. And I think, with my community especially, we're all aspiring online entrepreneurs. And there are a lot of, quote unquote, opportunities out there for us to make money online. And each one looks faster and easier than the last one. So I think this is something that most of us in particular face, because we're always looking for what is that fastest, easiest way that we can make the money that we want to make online. So I think this is a big one for probably everyone watching.
I think this comes down to focus. And I know focus is really hard because it's what we talked about at the beginning here, Rachel, which is it can be frustrating when you're trying something and it takes longer than you thought it would. It gets really tempting to now look at all the other things. But I think, and what I've seen from most of the people that are successful, and especially the overnight successes, like, that's been years in the making. Like, there aren't a lot of like quick wins really in the world. They're not. Anything that's really going to require you that is a goal, is something different than what you have. It requires you to be something different than you are. So it's gonna need you to change and do something different. So with that, I think shiny object syndrome sometimes comes from us not wanting to give focus. And that can also come down to some psychological things there too, like fear, like, well, if I try this and it doesn't work, well, then I'm going to be stuck, or then I have to go back to my day job. Or that fear of like, what are other people going to think? I think so much that comes in, and that can actually be the underlying root of why we keep trying to chase the things. Let me give an example in my own life. One of the things that I realized is I was also guilty of trying to do things. I was trying to start the YouTube channel, which I still haven't really done. And it's been like 3 years. But I was trying to start that and do an online course. And I was trying to speak on stages and trying to get my PR going on social media and all of these things. And I realized that what I was actually doing was I was giving myself this like permission to, can I swear on this?
Yes.
Okay. I should ask them to half-ass everything so that if I failed, I could then be like, yeah, well, it's because I didn't go all in on that. And so I only gave like 50%
I relate to that one. I totally relate to that one.
So then that's my excuse. And that's why I failed. Not because I'm not good enough and I'm not smart enough, but because I didn't go all in. So I always think that shiny object syndrome and lack of focus comes from something below the surface. 5% of it is, yeah, you turn your phone off, unsubscribe from the emails, stop following people that are talking about passive income, stop looking for more, just like focus on one thing. But why that becomes so difficult is because of those things. Like, how are you, shiny object syndrome, we don't do anything in life unless we're getting something from it. So what are you getting from the shiny object syndrome? From this lack of focus, what are you getting to hold on to? Are you getting to hold on to safety? Are you getting to hold on to an excuse that, well, this doesn't work, and this doesn't work, I might as well just go back to my crappy job like my parents told me I should do and just get my pension and be happy. Like, there is something that you are holding on to. There's something you are getting from it, or you would not be doing it. So that is where it's going to depend on the person. So hopefully this is bringing a couple ahas there for you. I bet you if you did some journaling, meditation, talking this out with a mentor or a coach or a friend or something like that, you'll start to uncover what's going on there, why you're holding on to that shiny object syndrome, and why you're so resistant to actually focusing and being consistent on one thing.
Yeah, like I'm wondering if it's just, fear of failure at the heart of it.
It totally could be. It's hard to say without knowing the person, right? But I think fear of failure comes up a lot, right? Or getting to hold on to an excuse that if you do fail, like, this is why, because the system didn't work, right? Not because you weren't good enough to do it.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right. I know you can relate to this one a lot. Perfectionism. So SK says, being the perfectionist, I wish I can stop being too perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my favorite quotes, and we've said this to one another so many times, done is better than perfect. And that has really allowed me to let go of that perfectionism for myself, just in the name of actually getting things done and moving on to the next thing and not worrying so much about the outcome, just focusing on the process and getting it done and, getting it out there into the world. So yeah, can you talk to us a little bit about perfectionism?
Yes. So I definitely struggle with this. Brendon Burchard, I don't know if you guys know him. He's one of the world's leading high performance coaches, works with Oprah and Usher, and he's just amazing. So I went to one of his events about 2 years ago. And one of the things he did is he asked in the room, he's like, who here is a perfectionist? And like a lot of us put up our hands. And he's like, okay. He's like, how many of you guys are like, you haven't put something out there because you're waiting for it to be perfect? Everyone puts their hands up, right? He's like, you guys are not perfectionists. You're just afraid. Because to be a perfectionist, you have to actually put something out there to then this definition of a perfectionist. If you're a real perfectionist, you would know the definition. So really, you're just scared. And it was like this huge, oh my gosh, of course, right? So I always think that in perfectionism, there is something there. You're afraid of something. You're afraid of somebody saying this isn't good enough, somebody saying or thinking a certain thing, or afraid of what you're putting out there not being good enough. So I think there's always fear under there. Otherwise, you would just be putting it out there. You'd just be trying it and then perfecting upon it like a real perfectionist would. So here's a couple of things that have helped me. First of all, that realization was like, okay, great. And I can remember that that's my fear talking. That's not what's actually real, that I don't need to have everything be perfect before I put it out there. Some of the things that have helped me, something that my coach helped me with, is getting to 80%. So I will set a timer for something, and just say, I just got to get to 80%. So for example, if I'm doing a blog post, if I'm doing a manuscript, if I'm doing a video, I just need to get it to 80%. And after that, I set a timer and I say 80% and then I walk away. And I allow myself then to come back and do minor revisions, but I focus on just getting it to 80% and putting it out there. Something else that has helped me is giving myself permission to come back to something at a later date if I need to. So, for example, I had perfectionism just come up as I was doing some podcast episodes on time management. So, first of all, I had to do 3 of them because that's how much that I needed. And I could feel myself as I was doing the script. I was like, oh, don't forget to add this in, and don't forget to add this in. And in the shower, I'm thinking of 3 more things to pop in there. And at a certain point, I was like, okay, this is taking me way too long. This doesn't even matter. I'm perfectionizing this, whatever it is. I'm over perfecting it. And so I said, okay, you know what? Here's my permission. I'm going to come back to it at a later date. So I put a date in my calendar. In 3 months, I started a note in my Google Drive, and I'll come back to it. In 3 months, I'll come back to it. In the meantime, if I have ideas, I just add it in there, and then I can update it. But that's what real perfecting is putting something out there in the world and then giving yourself permission to go back to it at a later date, as opposed to waiting till it's all perfect and finally put it out there. Because, like you said, Rachel, done is better than perfect. Progress over perfection every time. And those are some of the things that have helped me actually execute on that.
Yeah, I really like that concept of just getting it to 80% and then coming back. I've kind of been doing that for myself for quite some time, but I never really knew that there was, kind of this like name for that concept around it. So that's kind of interesting because it's something that I always like to do. I like to just whip off a first draft of something, not even worrying about any of the details, if it's good or not, and then just coming back to it. But that initial stage is just, like you said, just getting it out there, getting those ideas out there, and then, putting a time in your calendar to come back and take a look at it. And then you can do the massaging if you have to, but, not worrying about getting it right the first time.
Totally. And especially with something like low content publishing, I mean, it's pretty easy to say, well, I'm going to put this travel log or this journal out there, and I'll be, put it out there, put it on there, see what happens, and come back to it in a couple months. And then as more ideas come to you, you update it. But that's especially in low content publishing, I feel like you guys are the perfect arena to come back and revise and revisit it, right? It's
yes, amazing. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So this is kind of an interesting one. So this is from Linda, and she says, I've always been the person who sees the trees more than the forest. I get lost in the details. So this is kind of interesting. Like we all know that the details are important, but how do we ensure that we haven't lost the big picture in the process? Being stuck in the weeds is not a good place to be overall when we're trying to achieve a goal. So does this sound like it might tie into perfectionism a little bit, or is this kind of its own entity?
I would love to know more about what kind of details Linda is stuck in and where she's lost, because it's kind of hard to tell exactly from it. But it could be some procrastination. It could be a procrastination tactic, right? So procrastination doesn't always look like reading Cosmopolitan magazine or watching Real Housewives or binging on Netflix. Procrastination can also be something like getting lost in the details, right? Procrastination can also be manifesting in perfectionism or overworking on the wrong things. So it's hard to say exactly what this is. It could also be a lack of focus. It could also be like, oh, I'm trying to do the YouTube and the Pinterest and the LinkedIn and this. Like that could also be the details, right? So it's hard to say exactly what that is, because it could also be a lack of focus. So I guess a question for Linda, if she's listening to this, or anybody, like what are the kinds of details that you're getting lost in? And what do you think is really going on? Like that's a question that you're the best one to answer as you're going through this. What comes up in my mind is from a strategic perspective. One thing is, do you have one goal? Like, do you know what you're working towards? Do you know that the big picture of where you're going? Do you know what the forest is? So let's say you're lost in the trees. Do you at least know what forest you're in, right? Do you know what you're working towards and what forest you're actually in? If you don't know that, then that's where you got to go, right? Is figure out what goal am I working on and have a really clear picture of that. Then if you feel like you're lost, you're in the weeds, you're in the details, you don't know how to come up, what you can do is, and I'm a huge advocate for weekly planning and weekly reflections, taking time each week and sitting down and saying, okay, what am I going to do this week to progress me on this goal? So what are the trees I've got to walk through this week if this forest is where I'm going to be, right? What are the things I'm going to do this week for this goal? And then at the end of the week, reflecting and being like, did I do that? Did these things align? Am I still on track? Am I doing the right things for where I want to be? Am I still in the right forest? Or did I move on over to the rainforest when I'm actually supposed to be in the Great Bear Rainforest, right? Like the Amazon to the Great Bear Rainforest. Where am I, right? So I think knowing your big goal is number one, having clarity there, and then reflecting on a regular basis. Every week is a beautiful time frame because days can go by so fast, but on every week, it at least gives you a chance to say, am I aligning? Am I in the right place?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point you just mentioned of, whatever that detail is that you're lost in, does that serve your overall goal that you're trying to reach? And if it does, great. And if it doesn't, then, why am I focusing so much on this detail?
Totally. Yeah. Yes. So I hope that helps. And I'm in your community too, by the way. So I should say this. If anyone's got more questions on this when it goes out, just tag me in the group. I'm so happy to help answer them and help you guys dive a little deeper or offer any other insights. But I hope that helps. I think knowing where you're going and then giving yourself, okay, you got to have know what your forest looks like and also know what your trees are, and just take a look up and down and say, are we aligning? Are we in the right place?
Absolutely. All right, so we've got a couple more comments to go through, and then I'm going to let you go on your merry way here. The next one, we're going to talk about lack of results. So a couple of people mentioned something around this idea. One of them is Andy, and Andy says, applying what I've been shown and then not seeing the results I expect and not knowing what I'm doing wrong. Very frustrating. So what do we do when we are putting in the action? We've got our time scheduled. We're doing all the things we should be doing. We're implementing things that we're learning, but we're still not seeing those results. That's got to be the most frustrating place to be, because you are taking action. You are doing the things that you should be doing. And if you don't see those results, is there a more frustrating place to be than that? And what can we do about that?
Such a good question. So I think the first thing is to release the frustration, because frustration is really like your inner critic being like, it should be happening faster, or you're not doing enough, or you're doing too much, or all this work and blah. That stuff isn't going to serve you. So what I want to shift you to instead is to get curious. Get really curious about what's really going on and what is working and what's not. So remember, strategy is only about 20% of your success, maybe even less. So you can be doing all the right things and still not seeing the progress, because so much of it ties back to your mindset. So what I really encourage people to do, if you are doing all the right things and not seeing the process, shift your mindset first of all to getting curious and be like, what can I be learning here? What else is there? What am I missing? What is this trying to teach me? What's happening here? Where could I be expanding or being more consistent or learning more into this situation? So a couple ways to do this. 80-20 rule, about 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions.
Yes.
A really simple way you can do this is look back at your calendar for the last, let's say you've been working on something for a month or 3 months or 6 months. And first of all, think about all your wins, all your successes. I got these books out, this many sales, this top bestseller award, or whatever that is. Look at all your successes and your wins, and then look at the things that you did. Literally write them down, everything that you did from your calendar, and then draw lines between the two and say, okay, what are the things from my actions that got me my wins, that got me my results? I call this the wins list. So literally draw the lines, and you're going to see what are the things that actually got you the results. You can also then look at your results and your wins and say, okay, what are the things that got me here? And you're going to see that the majority of the things that you're doing on a daily basis, the majority of things that you're doing on a weekly basis, probably aren't actually driving your wins. So what you can do there is double down on your wins. Spend more time on the things that are actually getting you the results that you do want. Did I cut that out there?
You cut out a little bit there, yeah. Tech meltdown number 2. Well, I think it's been like number 3 or 4.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. Most of the other ones have just been like little bits here and there, but you're definitely going to have to repeat that last part.
The whole thing?
No, we kind of lost you when you were talking about drawing the line to the various, the wins that you had and what you can attribute the win to.
Okay, yeah. So the wins list. So basically, you get a piece of paper. One side is your wins and your successes. One side is your actions and things that you've done. what you're going to do is you're going to then draw lines from what actions to what the result was. And from your result, what were the actions that got you that result? And you're going to start to see a pretty clear picture of what are the things that are really moving the needle towards your goal. What are the things that are making a difference and really helping you and getting you results? You want to double down on those. Those are the things that are going to move the needle. Those are the things you want to spend more time on and work to eliminate, outsource, delegate, stop doing, simplify all the other things that are not getting you any results. So that will help give you a clear picture. Because I think sometimes, and I've heard this statistic just recently that especially new entrepreneurs, they spend about like 5% of their time doing things that actually generate revenue and 95% of their time doing all the other things. So sometimes it's just that. So yeah, and I can completely relate to that, right? So sometimes it's just a matter of seeing that played out and remembering to shift and prioritizing. First of all, putting the time for the things that are actually making the difference. Okay, if what's really making the difference is you publishing more books, okay, that is what's taking up your time. Like let the bookkeeping wait another couple weeks. Let the Pinterest strategy wait a little longer. Let the Amazon ads training wait. Focus on just getting the books out the door and getting them, I guess not out the door, on the line.
And trying to pinpoint like where in the process things are going wrong. Chances are you're doing probably 90% of things right, but there's maybe just this one thing that's tripping up the entire process and making it look like no results are being had. So oftentimes there's just one or two small tweaks that we need to make before everything starts fitting into place and then the results start coming in. So with the books, maybe it's the description, maybe it's the design, color choice. It's probably only one or two small things that need to be tweaked. So I think it's just putting it out there to maybe others with a bit more experience and asking for help. Say, look, I'm not sure exactly where things are going wrong, but let's try and pinpoint what that one area is that needs to be tweaked. And then oftentimes the results will start rolling in after that.
And this is where being curious is so key versus being frustrated.
Yeah.
So, because when you're curious, you're like, okay, there's something here. What can I learn? What can I figure out here? That makes such a big difference versus coming from frustration and being like, oh, I can't figure this out. I've been trying everything and nothing seems to be working. And you're going to stay stuck there. But when you come from a curious perspective, you hop in the Facebook community, you say, hey guys, here's what I'm at. What can I try? Or even you on your own, you're like, maybe I'm going to try a different title here. Maybe I'm going to try a different cover here. Maybe I'll try a different description and see what happens. And when you get curious and make it a bit of a game with yourself to see like, what can I figure out here? Then it becomes fun. Then things start flowing. And then you start to figure out what is happening, because I think entrepreneurship is such a puzzle, right? And it's really just about fitting together the puzzle pieces. And if you're trying to jam them, it doesn't work, right?
Yeah, you really want to be able to maintain an experimental mindset.
Totally.
Like, oh, interesting. That didn't seem to work. I wonder what would happen if I did X, Y, or Z.
Love it. And that's why you're so successful.
Oh, thank you. Okay, one more thing here, and this is just ubiquitous. Lack of time. So a few people mentioned this, and I don't think there's a single one of us that isn't familiar with this idea of not feeling like we have enough time. Yet, as we all know, we all have the exact same number of hours in the day, and some people are a lot more productive with those hours than others. So what is the secret here? Is a lack of time a valid reason, or is it more about making the most out of the time that you do have and, giving yourself the grace to maybe take a little bit longer to get somewhere that someone else is?
Yes to both of those things, okay? Yes and yes. So I got to say, speaking of lack of time, I could probably talk about this for hours and hours and hours. So I literally just released a 3-part series on my podcast on time management where I go into this way deeper. So I'm going to give you the Cole's Notes version of the things that and this is Bill. You were mentioning.
Okay, we cut out again a little bit there. So just back up a little bit.
Where did I cut out?
You were just about to talk about your 3 podcast episodes on time management.
Okay. So in the interest of time, I just created 3 podcast episodes on time management. So if you want like a deep dive on this, go listen to those. But I'll give you the Cole's Notes version here. So 3 things. Number 1 is having clarity. Number 2 is your mindset. And number 3 are the strategies. And so often we just jump right to the strategies. How do I make things faster? And how do I just do this quicker? And how do I get more time? And we think more time is the answer. And it's not. Um, a couple of decades ago, with the way that technology was evolving, there was a prediction that every one of us was actually going to be like the bourgeoisie. We were going to have so much time and people were going to be bored because technology was making everything so easy. And in fact, look what's happened. It's the exact opposite. We have these things, like we no longer have to churn our own butter. We no longer, like, we don't even have to go to the store anymore. Amazon Prime just delivers it right to our door. Everything is so easy. And yet we have still feel time stress and time pressure. So that's why I want to say it's not about strategies. Like Amazon Prime, if they change it to like 1 minute shipping, that's not going to all of a sudden give you a bunch of free time. Okay. So what does it come down to? Number one is clarity. You've got to have clarity. First of all, you got to have clarity on how you want to feel and what's your goal there? What's your connection to that? You also have to have clarity and an honest conversation with yourself about your capacity. And I think that's, Rachel, what you were alluding to there. Your capacity is how much time do you really have? How much time does your goal require? And where do those two match up? So, for example, if you have a very young child, you have a newborn, or Rachel and I were joking around, our 2-year-olds, like we can't leave for 2 seconds, or they're climbing on the counter and painting on the walls. Our time is going to be a lot less than someone else who maybe is coming out of an early retirement and they've got time and space, or someone who is on summer vacation from school, right? So you got to get really honest about your capacity. How much time do you really have? It doesn't matter whether you have 1 hour a week or you have 50 hours a week. You just got to know it. You just got to be honest with yourself about what you've got. You also have to be clear about how much time is your goal going to take. So again, not to say that you're going to know this perfectly, but for example, if your goal is to put up 5 low content books, that's different than I want to build the next Amazon, right? Like your time frames on those are going to be different and your commitment is going to be different on that. So just having an honest conversation with yourself about what's your capacity and what is your goal going to take and where do those two match up. I think the other part of clarity that's really important is understanding where is your zone, and this is from Michael Hyatt's Desire Zone. Like, what are the things that you're really good at and you're passionate about, and focusing on creating your life so that you spend more and more time in that zone. So there's a lot of things that you probably could do, should do, people are going to tell you to do. If it's not in the stuff that you're really good at and the stuff that you're passionate about doing, eventually you want to outsource that, stop doing it, simplify it, pass it off to somebody else. So you want to spend more and more time there because you're going to do it faster and you're going to be happier when you're doing that. So that's kind of what clarity is. Like, how much time do you really have? What's your capacity? What's your goal? And what are the things that you're the best at? And spend your time there. I'll talk really quickly on mindset because mindset comes up here. Let me give you an example here. I didn't have childcare for the first 20 months with my daughter. I thought, okay, I'm going to get childcare and like, look out world, I'm going to take over. I'm going to have all this time. I'm going to have naps. I'm going to do podcast interviews. I'm going to do all the things. I honestly peed away the first several weeks because all I did was I just added more and more things to my to-do list. All I did was just have more time to procrastinate on the things that I was afraid to do. All I did was create higher expectations for myself and put myself in the exact same situation as before. So I know that having more time isn't going to magically save those things. And that's where it's super important to look at the mindset. Again, the perfectionism thing. If I'm a perfectionist and suddenly I have 100 hours to perfect something over 50 hours, well, I just spend more time doing something that doesn't matter. So this is where it's really important to look at what are the mindset things. If I asked you, why don't you have time? And why don't you have the success that you want? You probably know the answer to that. And it's a mindset thing. It's something you've got to shift that so that you can create more time and space in your life.
Yes, so good. Yeah, once again, resonate with all of that stuff you just said. Yeah, you know what? That wraps it up. I think we've kind of covered everything, and I know you've provided so much value here to our viewers today. So thank you so much for joining me and having this conversation. I just really appreciate it so much. But before we
thank you so much for having me. You're amazing, and your community is phenomenal. And listen to what Rachel has to say. I'm sure you guys have already picked up on it because you're following her, but like if you listen to this episode and you listen to all the things that she shares, like she is such a prime example of how mindset matters. And I know you guys are following her for a lot of strategy and she's brilliant on that too, but her mindset, like that is.
Oh, thank incredible. You so much, Lisa. You know, I feel the exact same way about you. And I'm just so thrilled, not just to have you here today, but you know, that our paths crossed to begin with. And thank you for being such a dear friend.
Oh, right back at you.
Before we sign off here, though, tell our viewers today where you can be found and kind of what you're up to and where people can go to check you out and get more of this great information.
Okay, so if you want to know more, I have a podcast called Golden Girls Podcast, and that's where I talk about all things goals. So time management, values, how to get clarity if you have no idea where to start on your dreams, all those things. So if you want to check that out, Golden Girls Podcast is available anywhere you listen. Apple, Spotify, Google, Podbean, all these places that I've never even heard of, but we're there. And it's pretty new, but it's quickly becoming one of my favorite things to do and my favorite way to connect with people. And if you love this kind of conversations and the real talk, you're going to love the podcast too. Follow me on social too. I'm the Lisa Me Show on Facebook and Instagram. And I'd love to hear from you guys. If you have more questions, I'm in Rachel's community. Tag me, Lisa Marie Me Show. And let me know. I'm super happy to help. I love hearing from you guys and happy to help in any way that I can to help you to achieve your goal that you're working on through Rachel's low content publishing work.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you got some good use out of that. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell so that you can get notified every time I put out one of these videos, which is every single Monday. And for more low content publishing tips, head over to my blog at rachelharrisonson.com. And you can also check out my free guide, 3 Steps to Publishing Your First Low Content Book in Less Than a Day by clicking on the link in the description below. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.